For millennia, we've looked to the land for stories of power and empire. We think of Roman roads, of armies marching across continents, of grand cities built from stone and ambition. But the true highways of history, the arteries that carried the lifeblood of empires, were not made of stone. They were made of water. The vast, deep, and often unforgiving oceans were the real conduits of power, commerce, and destiny. Long before the first railroad tie was laid, before the first paved road stretched across a nation, ships were charting courses across the world, connecting distant shores and building empires one voyage at a time. These wooden vessels, powered by wind and human resolve, were the engines of a global transformation, knitting together a world that had once been impossibly vast and separate. The story of our modern world is written not in ink, but in salt water. Imagine standing on a foggy dock in a colonial harbor, say, Boston or Charleston in the 1700s. The air is thick with the smell of salt, damp wood, and distant lands. The only sounds are the gentle lapping of waves against the pylons, the mournful cry of a gull, and the creak of rigging on a tall ship shrouded in mist. These harbors were the gateways to empire. They were bustling hubs of controlled chaos by day. But in the quiet hours of dawn or dusk, they held a serene, almost sacred quality. This is where the known world met the unknown. The ship arriving was a miracle, a connection to a place you might only know from a map or a story. It brought letters, goods, news, and people, each a thread in the sprawling tapestry of a growing nation. A ship departing was a prayer sent out into the great expanse, carrying with it the hopes and fortunes of those on shore. Let's drift back to that time, to the quiet administrative heart of this maritime world. Picture a dimly lit room, smelling of beeswax and old paper. A clerk, by the light of a single candle, painstakingly records the contents of a ship's hold in a heavy, leather-bound ledger. His quill scratches softly across the page. Every barrel of molasses, every bolt of silk, every crate of tea is accounted for. These shipping manifests and dock records were more than just bookkeeping. They were the meticulous, beating pulse of commerce. They tell a story of supply and demand, of risk and reward, of the intricate web of trade that bound continents together. These documents, now preserved in archives, are quiet monuments to the immense logistical effort that underpinned the age of sail. Each entry is a testament to a journey completed, a promise fulfilled. The guardians of these maritime highways were the lighthouse keepers. Imagine a solitary figure, high in a stone tower, surrounded by the churning sea. Their life was one of routine, isolation, and immense responsibility. Through storms and stillness, their job was singular: to keep the light burning. For the mariner, that distant, blinking light was everything. It was a guide, a warning, a beacon of hope in the vast, featureless darkness of the ocean. It was the promise of safe harbor, a sign that land and home were near. The lighthouse keeper was the unsung hero of the coast, their steady hand ensuring that the ships of empire could navigate treacherous waters and return safely to port. Theirs was a quiet, lonely vigil that saved countless lives and secured the passage of untold fortunes. The ships themselves were marvels of their time, floating communities built of wood and iron, rope and canvas. Think of the sheer craftsmanship involved. The curve of a hull, designed to cut through waves with grace and speed. The towering masts and complex web of rigging. A puzzle of physics and engineering that allowed sailors to harness the power of the wind. Below deck, life was a world unto itself. The rhythmic creak and groan of the ship's timbers became a constant companion, a wooden lullaby for those crossing the ocean. The gentle sway of the vessel, the sound of water rushing past the hull, the muffled calls of the crew on deck. These sounds blended into a unique, hypnotic symphony of the sea. For weeks, sometimes months, this was the entire world for those on board. The naval administrators and shipping magnates, often seen as stern figures in portraits, were the masterminds behind this global chess game. From their offices in bustling port cities like New York or Philadelphia, they managed fleets, charted trade routes, and calculated risks. They were men who understood the language of tides, winds, and markets. They read letters from captains on the other side of the world, making decisions that could build or break fortunes. Their work was not on the high seas, but but their influence was felt across every ocean. They were the architects of the maritime network, their plans and investments launching 1,000 ships, and in doing so, shaping the economic destiny of a nation. Their quiet, strategic work was the invisible framework upon which the entire enterprise was built. As night falls over the harbor, a deep calm settles. The fog rolls in, softening the hard edges of the world, muffling sound, and creating a sense of peace and enclosure. The ships at anchor become sleeping giants, their tall masts disappearing into the low-hanging clouds. The gentle waves continue their timeless rhythm, a soft, percussive beat against the shore. This is the ocean at rest, its immense power held in a state of quiet potential. It's a time for reflection, for listening to the ancient whispers of the sea. It's in these moments of stillness that you can almost feel the weight of history, the countless journeys, the stories held within the water. The harbor, even in its slumber, remains a place of connection, a silent promise of the world beyond the horizon. Let this image of the quiet, foggy harbor soothe you. Let the gentle sound of the waves wash over you, carrying away the noise of the day. The story of the oceans is one of immense power and constant motion, but it is also a story of profound stillness and peace. It is the story of the steady light in the darkness, the meticulous care of the record keeper, the silent strength of the ship at rest. These are the quiet foundations of empire, the calm currents that run beneath the surface of history. They are a reminder that true strength is often found not in the storm, but in the enduring, patient, and quiet resolve that guides us safely through the night. As you drift off, let your mind sail on these calm waters, finding rest in the steady, gentle rhythm of the sea. Good night. Take a slow, deep breath in and gently let it go. Let the sounds of the world fade away, allowing your mind to drift into a quiet, peaceful space. Tonight, we're not just going to rest. We're going to journey back in time, to explore a force that has quietly, almost invisibly, shaped our world. A force as silent as the numbers on a page, yet as powerful as any army. Let's drift back and witness how money, in its many forms, steered the course of history. Imagine a dimly lit room, the air still and heavy with a scent of old paper and beeswax. A lone candle flickers, casting a warm, golden glow on a heavy oak desk. Here, a merchant in a quiet London counting house dips his quill into a pot of ink. The only sound is the soft scratch of the nib across a thick ledger, each stroke a record of trade, of ships crossing vast oceans, of fortunes rising and falling with the tides. This isn't just accounting. It's the quiet pulse of an empire, beating steadily in the heart of the city. Now, let your mind float further back to the bustling ports of the British Empire. Tall ships with their sails full of wind arrive, laden with spices from the East Indies, cotton from the Americas, tea from China. Each crate, each barrel, represents a transaction, a promise of payment. These goods are unloaded and tallied, their value recorded in those same leather-bound ledgers. The clinking of coins in a counting house, the rustle of banknotes, the silent agreement of a handshake, these are the subtle sounds of global commerce being born. We see the rise of the first great banks, their stone facades exuding an air of permanence and trust. Inside, beneath high, vaulted ceilings, clerks meticulously count stacks of gold and silver coins, their movements precise and practiced. They are the guardians of wealth, the facilitators of grand ambitions. A loan approved here could fund a voyage to a new continent. A line of credit extended could build a factory that will change a city forever. It's all happening, not with the roar of a cannon, but with the quiet scratch of a pen and the soft clink of currency. This is the unseen engine of history, humming along in the candlelit back rooms of power. Let's relax even deeper now, as our journey continues. Picture the intricate systems of taxation taking shape. In grand government buildings, officials devise methods to collect revenue, funding the roads, the navies, and the administration that hold a vast empire together. A new tax on tea, a stamp duty on paper. These decisions, made in kit, wood-paneled offices, would ripple across the globe, sometimes sparking discontent, other times financing incredible feats of engineering and exploration. The flow of money is like a great river, carving its path through the landscape of history, sometimes gently, sometimes with unstoppable force. We see colonial outposts, where administrators in tropical heat collect revenues from local trade. The currency might be different rupees, shillings, dollars, but the principle is the same. Wealth is being extracted, recorded, and sent back to the heart of the empire, funding its growth and expansion. It's a silent, relentless process, a global network of finance connecting the farthest corners of the earth to a single center of power in London. Each coin, each note, is a thread in this vast, intricate tapestry. The story isn't written in grand declarations, but in the mundane, day-to-day entries of profit and loss, credit and debit. As you drift closer to sleep, let these images wash over you. See the soft glow of gas lamps on a foggy London street, illuminating the windows of the stock exchange. Inside, fortunes are made and lost in a flurry of whispered bids and silent gestures. The fate of industries and nations hangs on the fluctuating prices of shares. It is the invisible hand of the market, guiding the allocation of capital, rewarding innovation, and penalizing failure. Imagine the vast plantations of the colonies, the fields of sugar cane or cotton stretching to the horizon. The harvest is collected, processed, and shipped, its value meticulously calculated and entered into the accounts. This flow of resources, driven by the pursuit of profit, reshapes landscapes and societies on a global scale. Every ledger is a story, every balance sheet a chapter in the epic of civilization. The story of money is the story of human ambition, of trust, of power, and of the quiet, persistent desire to build, to trade, and to create. It is a story told, not in words, but in numbers. A universal language understood from the counting houses of London to the trading posts of Calcutta. Feel the weight of your body sinking into the mattress, your breathing slow and regular. Our historical journey is nearing its end for tonight. We're floating now, high above it all, seeing the interconnected web of trade routes and financial flows that span the globe. From the grand, imposing architecture of the Bank of England to the simple abacus used by a merchant in a faraway market, the tools of finance have been the instruments of change. They have financed wars and funded peace. They have built empires and fueled revolutions. They have enabled voyages of discovery and sponsored masterpieces of art. All of this power, all of this history, unfolding with the quiet dignity of a well-kept ledger under the steady, warm glow of candlelight. The numbers don't shout, they whisper, and in their whispers, we can hear the story of the world. Let this quiet, steady rhythm guide you now into a deep and restorative sleep. There is nothing more for you to do, nothing to figure out. Just allow yourself to rest, to float, to dream. The world of commerce and finance continues its silent work, but your work for today is done. Let the rhythmic images of counting coins, of flowing ink, of candlelight on old wood, lull you into a state of perfect calm. The gentle, methodical nature of this historical engine can be a source of deep tranquility. It's a story of order, of systems, of cause and effect, unfolding over centuries. There's a profound peace in observing this steady, predictable rhythm. Each transaction is a small, quiet moment, but together they form a powerful current. Let your mind drift along this current now, away from the cares of the day, into the vast, quiet ocean of sleep. The counting houses are closing for the night. The ledgers are put away, and the candles are being extinguished one by one, leaving only the soft, peaceful dark. Rest well, and allow the quiet hum of history to be your gentle lullaby. The world will be here when you wake, ready for a new day, a new chapter. For now, there is only this moment of profound peace and stillness. Sleep now. Sleep deeply. Hello and welcome. Get comfortable. Settle into your bed, and let your body begin to relax. Tonight, we're going to drift off to a story about ruling lands you've never seen, about wielding power from thousands of miles away. It's a tale not of kings and queens and grand castles, but of the quiet, methodical work of governance, of clerks and surveyors, of maps and numbers that shape the world. Imagine, for a moment, you are given a vast territory, a place you have only read about in books or seen on hand-drawn maps. The air is different. The seasons are reversed. The languages are a symphony of unfamiliar sounds. how would you even begin to understand it, let alone rule it? You can't be everywhere at once. Your authority must travel through others, through a chain of command stretching across oceans and continents. This is the story of colonial administration. A world built not just with soldiers, but with paper. Let's travel back in time, to the Age of Empires. From a cool, often rainy London, decisions were made that rippled across the globe. The British Empire, at its peak, was a colossal entity, a patchwork of territories held together by a complex web of control. To manage this empire, they needed people on the ground. These were the governors, the district commissioners, the residents, men, often young, who left their homes in England, Scotland, or Ireland for the promise of adventure, career, and influence in faraway lands. Picture a young man stepping off a ship in Calcutta, India. The heat hits him like a physical force, a wall of humid air, thick with the scent of spices, flowers, and the press of a million lives. This is his new home, his new dominion. He is a district officer, responsible for an area perhaps the size of a small American state, with a population of millions. He is the face of the crown, the ultimate authority in this small corner of the empire. His job is to collect taxes, maintain order, and administer justice. But how? He barely speaks the language. The customs are a mystery. He relies on a small army of local clerks, translators, and officials who know the land and its people intimately. These local men are the essential gears in the great machine of empire, often invisible in the grand histories, but without whom nothing would function. The district officer's life is one of perpetual touring. He spends months on horseback or in a palanquin, a covered litter carried by servants, traveling from village to village. His tent is his moving office. Here, he holds court, listening to disputes between neighbors over a stray goat or the boundary of a rice paddy. He is the judge, jury, and final word. His decisions are based on a mixture of British common law and his own interpretation of local customs, often a confusing and contradictory blend. He tries to be fair, to be just, but his understanding is always incomplete, seen through the filter of his own culture and his position as an outsider. At night, under a canopy of stars brighter than any he ever saw back home, he writes his reports. Long, detailed letters back to his superiors, filled with observations on the harvest, the mood of the people, the state of the roads. These reports, written by candlelit in the quiet of the Indian night, were the lifeblood of the empire. They were the data, the information that allowed a government in London to feel the pulse of its most distant territories. Now, let our minds drift across the Indian Ocean to the vast continent of Africa. Here, the challenge of governance was different, but the methods were similar. In places like Kenya or Nigeria, British administrators encountered hundreds of different societies, each with its own political structure. Instead of replacing them entirely, they often opted for a system called indirect rule. They would identify a local chief or leader and rule through him. This seemed efficient. The chief already had the respect of his people. He understood their traditions. The British would support him, give him a salary, and in return, he would ensure taxes were paid and colonial laws were followed. But this system had deep, often unseen consequences. Sometimes, the British would mistakenly empower a person who had no real traditional authority, creating new tensions in the community. Other times, the role of the chief was fundamentally changed. He was no longer just accountable to his people. He was now an employee of the colonial state. This delicate balance of power, this attempt to govern through existing structures, was a constant, complex negotiation. The administrator's job was to tour his district, meet with the chiefs, and smooth over disputes, all while projecting an aura of unshakable British authority. He was a diplomat, a bureaucrat, and a ruler, all rolled into one. Let's imagine one such administrator in a remote part of East Africa. He travels with a long line of porters carrying his tent, his tin bathtub, his foldable desk, and his case of official papers. He sets up camp near a village and summons the local elder. They sit under the shade of an acacia tree, speaking through a translator. The administrator wants to know how many people live here, how many cattle they own. This information is for the census. The census, it sounds so simple, so mundane, just counting people. But for the colonial state, the census was a tool of immense power. It was the first step to knowing a territory. How can you tax people if you don't know how many there are? How can you conscript soldiers or recruit laborers if you don't know where they live? The census turned people into numbers, into neat columns on a ledger. It categorized them, often imposing rigid ethnic or tribal labels that hadn't existed in such a fixed way before. These labels, created for administrative convenience, would go on to have profound and lasting impacts on the identities and politics of the region. And with the counting of people came the mapping of land. Imagine the surveyor, with his theodolite and measuring chains, trekking through dense jungle or across arid savanna. His job was to create order out of what seemed to his eyes to be chaos. He drew straight lines on maps, creating boundaries for properties, districts, and colonies. These lines often cut across ancient migration routes, divided communities, or ignored the way people actually used the land. But on a map, in an office in London, they looked clean, logical, and controllable. Land that was once held communally was now registered as private property, a concept that could be bought, sold, and, most importantly, taxed. The land survey wasn't just about drawing maps, it was about fundamentally changing the relationship between people and the ground beneath their feet. Now, let's journey across the Atlantic, to the warm, turquoised waters of the Caribbean. Here, in islands like Jamaica or Barbados, the history of colonial rule was older and different. It was a history built on sugar plantations and the brutal legacy of slavery. By the late 19th century, slavery had been abolished, but the colonial structure remained firmly in place. The governor, living in a grand residence with sweeping verandas, presided over an island society still deeply divided by race and class. His role was to manage the economy, which was often dependent on a single crop, and to maintain a social order that heavily favored the white plantocracy. The courts were a key instrument of this control. A magistrate, in his powdered wig and black robes, would sit in a stuffy courtroom, hearing cases that ranged from petty theft to disputes over labor contracts. The law he administered was British law, and the proceedings were in English, a language many of the island's inhabitants did not speak fluently. Justice, in this context, was often a performance of power, a reinforcement of the colonial hierarchy. Yet, within these same courts, people also learned to use the language of the law to fight for their own rights, planting the seeds of future challenges to colonial authority. From the sun-drenched Caribbean to the plains of India and the savannas of Africa, a common thread emerges: the power of information. The empire was an empire of paper, reports, censuses, surveys, legal judgments, letters all flowing from the periphery to the center and back again. This relentless collection of data was an attempt to make the unfamiliar known, to make the complex simple, and to make the distant governable. It was an effort to create a remote control state, managed by a small number of men who believed in their right to rule, in the superiority of their systems, and in the mission of their empire. As we drift deeper into relaxation, let these images float gently in your mind. The soft scratch of a pen on paper in a tent under the stars. The rhythmic chant of porters carrying their loads through a forest path. The formal, quiet atmosphere of a colonial courtroom. These are the quiet, unseen mechanics of power. The soft-spoken processes that shaped millions of lives and redrew the map of the world. It is a story not of grand battles, but of quiet administration, of the steady, patient work of building and maintaining an empire from afar. Let the gentle rhythm of this story guide you now into a deep and peaceful sleep. Sleep well. Have you ever stood in the quiet of twilight and felt the world exhale? It's a moment of transition, where the vibrant energy of the day gently gives way to the stillness of the night. This is the story of all great things, not of their loud and glorious beginnings, but of their quiet, inevitable ends. We often imagine the fall of empires as a thunderous clash of swords, a cataclysmic event that shakes the world. But more often than not, it's a whisper, not a roar. It's the slow, almost imperceptible fading of a once brilliant color. It begins in the heart of the empire, a place once teeming with unshakable confidence. Decrees are still issued, but the ink seems a little fainter. Grand speeches are made, but the echoes don't carry as far. The monumental stone buildings, once symbols of eternal power, start to look a little weary, their edges softened by time and rain, like old men remembering their youth. The change isn't announced in headlines. It's felt in the streets. The bustling markets, once overflowing with goods from every corner of the known world, become a little less crowded. The variety of spices isn't quite what it used to be. The silks from distant lands are harder to find. It's a subtle shift, one you might not notice day to day. But over time, the vibrant tapestry of global commerce begins to fray at the edges. Shopkeepers who once boasted of new shipments arriving daily now speak of delays, of routes that are no longer safe, of partners who have simply stopped writing back. Far away, on the distant frontiers, the first real signs appear. A lone watchtower on a desolate hill, once a crucial link in a chain of defense, is quietly decommissioned. The soldiers stationed there, men who had spent their lives staring out at the horizon, are told their watch is over. They pack their few belongings, not with the fanfare of a victorious return, but with a quiet, unsettling sense of finality. They leave behind an empty stone shell, a silent testament to a border that is slowly, inexorably, pulling back. The world they were tasked to hold is shrinking. Then, the great fleets, the pride of the empire, begin their final journey home. One by one, the majestic ships, their sails, weathered by 1,000 storms, glide into harbor for the last time. There are no cheering crowds to greet them. The docks, once a frenzy of activity, are strangely silent. The sailors disembark, their faces etched with the sun and sea, and melt into the city. Their stories of far-off lands now just memories. The great ships are tied up, their hulls creaking a final lullaby as they settle into a long, quiet slumber. The age of grand exploration and conquest is drawing to a close, not with a naval battle, but with the gentle lapping of water against forgotten wood. In the capital, the grand administrative offices, those labyrinths of power where the fate of millions was decided, begin to empty. One by one, windows go dark. Corridors that once echoed with the hurried footsteps of ambitious clerks and powerful officials fall silent. Dust settles on scrolls and ledgers filled with the names of forgotten provinces and abandoned projects. The machinery of the empire, once a relentless, unstoppable force, is slowly grinding to a halt. It's not a sudden breakdown, but a gradual running down of a clockwork mechanism that has simply run out of spring. The world outside the empire's borders begins to change. For generations, it had revolved around this single, massive center of gravity. Now, with that pull weakening, new centers of power begin to emerge. Towns that were once simple trading posts on the empire's periphery become bustling cities in their own right. New languages, new customs, new ideas flourish in the space left behind. The old maps, meticulously drawn and fiercely protected, become obsolete. The world is redrawing itself, not through war, but through the natural, irrepressible tide of human ambition and creativity. Look up at the sky in these moments. It's a canvas of deep purples, soft oranges, and fading blues. It's the twilight of an age. There's a profound beauty in this decline, a melancholic peace. It's the feeling of a long story reaching its final chapter. The characters we've followed, the grand dramas we've witnessed, are all finding their resolution, not in a grand finale, but in a quiet acceptance of the end. The sun doesn't just vanish. It sinks slowly, painting the world in beautiful, somber colors before it disappears. This is the grace of ending. This process reminds us that nothing, no matter how strong, how vast, or how seemingly permanent, is immune to the flow of time. The strongest mountain is worn down by the wind and rain. The tallest tree eventually returns to the soil, and the mightiest empires, with all their legions and laws and monuments, fade like a dream upon waking. But this isn't a story of loss, it's a story of change. The energy of the empire doesn't just disappear, it transforms. It seeps back into the earth, into the people, into the very air. It becomes the foundation for what comes next. The stones of the abandoned watchtowers are used to build new homes. The forgotten trade routes become the paths for new journeys. The old stories become the myths and legends of a new era. The end of one thing is always the beginning of another. It's a continuous, unbroken cycle. The quiet fall of the empire is not a death, but a deep, long exhale, making way for the world to take its next breath. It's the silent turning of a page in the grand, endless book of history. And in that silence, in that peaceful twilight, we can feel the profound, humbling, and beautiful truth of our own fleeting existence. We are all part of this magnificent, ever-changing tapestry, a story that is constantly being unwritten and rewritten. So when you find yourself in a moment of quiet reflection, as the day turns to night, think of the silent ships, the empty offices, the fading light. Feel the peaceful release of something great letting go. It's a reminder that all things have their season, and there is a serene and powerful beauty in the final, gentle moments of an era, as it surrenders to the quiet, inevitable tide of what is to come. Thank you for listening. As we draw this to a close, let's just take a moment to reflect. It's easy to think of history as something distant, a collection of stories in a book, or black and white photographs of people long gone. But it isn't, is it? It's all around us, woven into the very fabric of our daily lives. The systems that were put in place centuries ago, the decisions made in faraway rooms by people we've never met, that continue to echo today. They're in the language we speak, the laws that govern us, the very layout of the cities we call home. Think about it. When you walk through a bustling city, look up. See that modern glass skyscraper reflecting the sky. Now look next to it. You might see a stone building with classical columns, a courthouse, a library, or an old post office. That blend of the old and the new. That's not an accident. It's the story of our world, written in brick and steel. The past isn't just a foundation we've built upon. It's a living part of the structure, a room we still occupy. The old British architecture in so many cities, from Boston to Mumbai, stands as a quiet testament to a global network that once was. It's a silent reminder of how interconnected our world has always been, how one era flows into the next, often without us even noticing. The influence is subtle, a ghost in the machine of our modern world. And it's in these quiet moments of observation that we can truly feel the weight and the texture of history. It's not just in the grand monuments, but in the ordinary street corners, where yesterday meets today. Now, let's go deeper, beyond the visible structures. Think about the invisible architecture that shapes our day, the paperwork, the bureaucracy, the simple act of filling out a form. Where did that come from? It's a legacy of administration, a system designed to manage vast territories and populations. That quiet rustle of paper in an office, the rhythmic click of a keyboard inputting data, the standardized procedures we follow without a second thought, these are the modern echoes of ancient administrative routines. They were born from a need for order, for a way to make the complex manageable. Picture a quiet government office late at night. The daytime hustle has faded, leaving only the low hum of computers and the soft glow of a desk lamp on a stack of files. In this stillness, you can almost feel the continuity, the unbroken chain of tasks and duties stretching back through time. The work done here, in this quiet space, is part of a system much larger and older than any single person. It's a river of procedure that has been flowing for generations, carving its path through society. It's methodical, it's predictable, and in its own way, it's a source of stability. We might complain about red tape, but these systems are the unseen scaffolding that holds our complex world together, ensuring that things, for the most part, just work. And isn't it fascinating how these grand historical forces manifest in such mundane, personal walls? The way our legal systems are structured, with concepts of common law and precedent, traces its lineage back through centuries of debate and refinement. The global financial markets, with their intricate rules and networks, evolved from old trade routes and colonial economic policies. It's a web of influence so vast and intricate that we often take it for granted. But it's there, in the background of every transaction, every legal proceeding, every civic duty. As we consider this immense legacy, let's allow our minds to settle. Think of the quiet persistence of these systems. They are like a slow, deep breath that the world takes. They operate silently, tirelessly, day in and day out. The world keeps turning, and the machinery of modern life keeps humming along, powered by principles and practices laid down long ago. It's a comforting thought, in a way. It reminds us that we are part of something much larger than ourselves, a continuum of human effort and ingenuity. Now, let's let the day's thoughts begin to drift away. Imagine the city lights outside your window, each one a tiny point in a vast, interconnected grid. Each light represents a life, a story, a home, all functioning within this massive, intricate framework we've been exploring. The sound of distant traffic becomes a gentle, rhythmic pulse, like the heartbeat of the city. The noise fades into a soft, ambient hum, a lullaby for a world settling down for the night. Let your own breathing become slow and steady, mirroring that calm rhythm. Inhale slowly, and as you exhale, feel the tension of the day melting away. Release the need to analyze, to understand everything. Just be present in this moment of quiet. Feel the support of the surface beneath you, holding you completely. There is nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to be, except right here, resting. Visualize those quiet offices we talked about, now completely dark. The desks are clear, the chairs are empty. The only light is the soft moonlight filtering through the windows, casting long, gentle shadows across the floor. All is still. The paperwork sleeps in its files. The computers are silent. The work is done for the day. The entire system is at rest, recharging for tomorrow. And just as the city rests, you too can allow yourself to rest. Let go of the day's worries and thoughts. Picture them as leaves floating down a slow, gentle river, drifting away from you, further and further, until they are out of sight. The river is calm, its surface like glass, reflecting the soft light of the moon. Your mind becomes as clear and calm as that water. Any stray thoughts that appear simply float by without disturbing the peace. Feel a sense of gentle gratitude for the quiet, unseen structures that support our lives. Gratitude for the stability and order they provide, allowing us the peace of mind to rest and dream. We are all connected in this vast, historical tapestry, and tonight, we are all connected in our shared need for rest and renewal. As you drift deeper into relaxation, let the world outside fade away completely. The only thing that matters now is your own comfort, your own peace. Allow the darkness to be a soft, warm blanket, enveloping you in a feeling of safety and security. Listen to the sound of your own quiet breathing, in and out, a slow, peaceful rhythm. Each breath takes you deeper into a state of calm. Each breath is an anchor to this present moment of tranquility. The great story of history will be there tomorrow. The complexities of the world will wait. But for now, it is time for rest. It is time to let go. Let the gentle fate of our journey tonight guide you into a peaceful and restorative sleep. Thank you for spending this time with us. Rest well. Follow your breath into dreams. Good night.